Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Bear Guys and 2AT Fitness.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Fucking Halloween Resurrection. Michael Chance here of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man who has risen himself, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hello to the good people, Tom.
This is to us for successfully, let me give you a little more, putting together something collectively so ingenious as a team and a duo that we should definitely be able to secure a lot of food on the table for ourselves as long as everything goes as nicely as it's going right now. What the hell is Busta Rhymes talking about here?
One of my favorite notes for this movie is, and obviously we've referenced this several times, the book Taking Shape, but they give a lot of play in that book about how Busta wasn't in the movie originally as much, and apparently we owe Busta Rhymes to test audiences.
Yeah, but only in New Jersey.
Yes, exactly. But
so I want to know what your problem is, New Jersey.
Exactly. Who liked him so much that they had to put more in. And then I loved this bit about, he really took control of his character by mostly just making up the dialogue himself or adding to it. And
but
it's so evident in the movie when you watch it.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you don't need to read a book about the making of Halloween Resurrection to know that he rewrote his own dialogue.
Right.
It is plainly evident in the film itself. And there are also moments later on we'll get there, but there are moments later on in the movie where, very clearly he's writing the arc of his character as well. It goes beyond dialogue because he stuff happens in this movie.
He's trying to make a despicable person become likable.
Yeah, well, stuff happens in this movie vis-a-vis characters of Michael Myers that's never happened before.
Yeah,
or
right.
since.
Right. Yes.
And he literally pats himself on the back.
On the back. Yes, that's how I was saving it, Tom. You took my thunder. I was saving it. Because it's one of my favorite moments in the whole fucking movie.
Luckily, there are plenty more regards Mr. Rhymes.
That's true.
I also like, to incorporate a little bit of semi-breaking news.
Okay.
That our suspicion that they just, they wanted to, basically they wanted to have another LL Cool J.
Oh, yeah.
They wanted to sort of make the lightning strike twice.
They couldn't get him because he was...
they couldn't get him.
Partly because maybe of H2O. And I think 2002 is also Deep Blue Sea territory. So he's becoming a bona fide movie star, and they couldn't afford him.
It's sort of in between trying to get LL Cool J and eventually ending up with Busta Rhymes. They auditioned Coolio. So it's even more cynical than I imagined.
Yes.
It was like, we're gonna get a famous rapper
no matter what
cost. And the cost was Busta Rhymes.
Yes.
A man who speaks in prose as if he's rapping.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot separate the way, the cadence of his dialogue from how he sings his songs.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly the same. There's no distinction. Not to mention the verbal diarrhea coming out of his mouth.
Oh,
when he opens it, which is fascinating.
It's amazing.
It kind of is, yeah.
But my favorite part about all of that is that the producers and the production company, everybody involved all thought, well, this is a good thing.
Isn't it fast? Like, in the next film, I'm going to be strongly arguing that the response to the movie was kind of a mass hallucination.
Right.
But I think there was another one going on here on the set of the movie, and apparently in a cinema in New Jersey.
Yeah.
that what Busta Rhymes was doing was redeeming the movie, not not
holding
condemning
it
it
back.
to failure. I love Rick Rosenthal's quote of where he sort of says, "Yeah, it's great. We set up the martial arts at the beginning of the film, and then it comes back at the end." I'm like, "Yeah, technically that is what happened, but don't talk about it as if it's a good
As
thing."
if it's a good thing. And he also said, in regards to that New Jersey audience, we were surprised as anybody that they loved Busta Rhymes so much. I mean, we just felt like we had to up the ante for him,
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about Halloween Resurrection, a 2002 film, right?
Yes.
I think I wrote down 2012 here. 2002 film, directed, as we just said, by Rick Rosenthal, who, of course, did direct Halloween 2.
Yeah, and the first director to be asked back.
In addition, he directed American Dreamer, Ruskies, and Bad Boys. Not that Bad Boys. Another Bad Boys.
Another Bad Boys.
Sean Penn Bad Boys.
This is also fascinating in the skewered timeline of the series, because in the H2O timeline, Rick Rosenthal has directed Halloween 2 and Halloween 4, but Halloween 2 is enough. H2O is enough of a reset that he's effectively redirecting Halloween 2 again.
Yeah, right.
He's directed two Halloween 2s and a Halloween 2 and a Halloween 4 simultaneously.
That's amazing. Well, so listen.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about it kind of already in the ranking episode. This movie, not beloved. 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. However, budget of $13 million, opening weekend of $12 million, which kind of surprised me. In the USA, $30.3 million, and in the world, $37.6 million.
But that was all on the back of H2O and how well that did. And
yeah, I think so.
Because as we talked about in the
but
the
when
last
you,
episode,
because I can remember
Yeah.
seeing a preview for this movie
Uh-huh.
and being really surprised.
Yeah.
Because the last time we saw Michael Myers, his head was chopped off, one. And it just felt like a
But
quick...
you know better by now, right?
Yeah,
I mean-
right. But it felt like a quick turnaround, too. And of course,
Yeah.
you're seeing they're front-loading a lot of Jamie Lee Curtis in
Yes.
those previews. So I was surprised by all of this. But then, obviously, the preview is going to show you that, like, Busta Rhymes is involved in Dangertainment, and, like, these kids are going into the house.
Not Tom Skerritt this time, Busta Rhymes.
Yeah. Busta Rhymes is involved.
Yeah.
And so...
Too involved,
Yeah.
some might say.
Yeah, at least the two of us. So you had
And anyone
this,
who doesn't
you
live in New
definitely,
Jersey.
upon watching that preview, you had a sense of, I don't
Yeah.
think we're continuing on to a good place. So you're right in the sense that it's building on the back
I
of
see what you
H2O,
mean, right, yeah.
but I still
The
think,
warning
like, I'm
signs were
surprised
there.
that it made that much money.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose I hear what you're saying, like, that there must have been grumblings prior to the film happening. And of course it was supposed to come out much earlier. It was supposed to be an even quicker turnaround than it was.
Yeah, right.
And it was
Because it was supposed to
slated
come out in 2001.
Right. September 2001,
Yeah.
in fact. Probably
That's-
probably a good, I mean, probably
Wow.
a good job it didn't.
Yeah.
For several reasons. But I think just that disparity of H2O rescued the series from direct-to-video hell. That the fact that it was even a theatrical franchise at this point was sort of enough to kind of get this audience on board.
Right.
That's what I attribute.
I mean,
it to.
I was there. No
I mean-
surprise there.
You know, your ticket is in the bag.
Yeah.
They deduct the price
Right,
of
they
your
don't even
ticket
count
from
it
the
at
box.
this point.
Yeah, they don't even count it. It's as close to like it's as close to like a fixed amount of money in economics as there is.
Now, I also, yeah, you're absolutely right. I also, sort of moving on here, I'm pretty sure I have this right because it's been a while since I made my notes.
Yes.
But I have a note here that I think Rick Rosenthal directed a sequel that I suppose we'll have to deal with at some point called The Birds 2, Land's End.
Yes, he did.
But he, under the name Alan Smithy.
Yeah.
Which I just love.
That has been on my list for a watch along for quite some time.
Ah.
So I think we will get there. Availability has been a problem,
Right.
surprisingly. I don't think anyone wants that film out there.
Except the two of us.
Right, but I mean that's interesting in a number of regards. It's another Rosenthal sequel. Obviously, Hitchcock is usually influential on Halloween, and this is an official Hitchcock sequel. So that will be an interesting counterpoint to his work in Halloween, I think.
Yeah. All right, well, let's start at the beginning, Tom. Do you have any credit notes? Because this is interesting. You kind of have credits and a cold open followed by the title. So where does this land in our impasse world?
Let's start. Let's not call it a cold open. If this film was made 5 years later, this would be an internet short.
Yeah, right.
This is an entirely self-contained short film.
You know what I was thinking about last night? That by the time you get to the end of this film, you have completely forgotten the beginning of this film.
Right. And one of the early
it literally is a self-contained story that just ends.
Yeah.
17 minutes into the film.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interquel, right? I mean,
yeah, right.
I think part of there's the main reason this exists is twofold. One, to retcon the ending of the last film in which Michael Myers definitely died.
Yes.
And secondly, to make it look as if Jamie Lee Curtis is the star of this film.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are the two major reasons that this exists. But given that those, two worthless criteria is what's motivating this 15 minutes of film, I actually quite enjoy it. I think it's got some really good qualities in it. And Larry Brand, the screenwriter,
I was just going to say, because he was in the book, he's talking about how this is the one part of his script that's pretty much untouched.
Yes.
And by the way, going back to, I think, our last episode, Larry Brand is the writer who really fucking hates Bob Weinstein. Remember, I couldn't remember which one it was?
Oh, yeah.
And it's him, for sure.
Yes, I read that interview, too. It's I like the idea that there was a number of yes men at Miramax just anticipating the idiotic decisions that Weinstein was gonna make.
Who Larry Brand says, I'm not even sure he can read.
Yeah, exactly. But I like the idea that there are people out there just trying to think like Weinstein.
Right.
Just to save them the trouble of having to redo whatever it is he wants to be redone.
That's a good idea, said no one ever. Let's think like a Weinstein.
I know.
Fuck.
It all looks so shady in retrospect.
Yeah.
So
hasn't aged well.
No. So I mean, the
thinking, but not this front scene. I think this front scene does age fairly well.
It ages very well, and in a way, I think it helps that it's self-contained, and it helps that it has a beginning and a middle and an end. And
they give a lot of play in that book about the unenviable task of trying to put Laurie Strode into this movie and end her story all in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And they talk about it like it's a terrible task that didn't come off well. But I actually think...
Oh, they did the best with it they absolutely could.
Yeah, I mean, I think it actually works.
Well, that's it. I mean,
the only thing it doesn't do is help the rest of the film, because all we've known of Michael Myers is I have to kill some sort of family member.
Yes.
And it's like he finally gets Laurie Strode and goes, I guess I'll go home. And then that's where this movie plays out.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and also, hasn't he been living under the house for...
I
People
don't
under the
know.
stairs style?
But let's not forget, she's got to be in a sanitarium, probably in California, right? So,
I don't want to get into geography at this
Yeah.
point. All I know is we're back in Haddonfield.
Right.
Okay.
another thing
A
I
town
noticed for
big
this
enough,
film,
a town
though,
big
Tom,
enough to have a university, apparently.
Yeah, right, exactly. But
But,
another thing
before-
I noticed
Yeah,
was
go for it.
that Haddonfield is not really much of a character in this movie, probably more than any of the other movies.
It's just the house, right? It's
Yeah.
just it's literally the
It's
the
literally,
the house.
well, that and the college.
That and the college, yes.
Yeah.
Neither of which.
What was it called? Haddonfield Hills University?
No, just Haddonfield University.
I seem to remember an HH somewhere.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
All right.
Well, I do actually. So I know we started talking about it, but I do have some credit notes, obviously, because I'm me.
Yes, you're you.
We
Why
go
do you
straight.
think I asked?
I know. But so I just this is not a cold open. This is a 15 minute.
It is an interquel. You're really right.
It's a 15-minute movie.
Yeah.
It's all the Halloween elements boiled down to 15 minutes of screen time.
Mm-hmm.
We go straight into the Carpenter theme, and then there's like an early digital era attempt to reproduce the look of the original titles.
Yeah, that's my
which
note.
shrouds this movie in a veil of cheapness from the beginning.
Right.
And then the credits the titles themselves, the credits in the titles are fascinating because it's bookended by contemporary non-acting celebrities. Right? Sort of. So we've got like and legacy characters. So it's like Jamie Lee Curtis, Busta Rhymes, Tyra Banks. So you're like, some of these
Sure.
people are great, great film stars. Others are not even actors. It's like a really weird sort of you're getting a sense of how the film is going to run the gamut.
Some are getting shit for the mistakes they're making hosting Dancing with the Stars.
Yes, exactly. But also, do you know why Sean Patrick Thomas is a special appearance?
No.
I have no idea. Like when I saw it, I was like, well, I assume it's a cameo. I mean, I don't know who this guy is, but okay. Apparently his appearance is
I
special.
thought the same thing, because
It's like, it's all I could think of
isn't
is
there
like,
a Sean Patrick Flannery? Like, isn't that
yeah,
the
but
person
that's
we
a different
know?
name. There's no way you're gonna get
I-
confused, and one is black and one is white. I mean, it's not
I
gonna.
know. But I kept thinking, were they playing on that? Like, did they think because Sean and Patrick are the same that it's somehow...
It baffles me because that made me think he was that he was. Well, I mean, it baffled me because like I don't know how, with the greatest of respect to this actor, why this appearance would be special.
Yeah.
But also, I expect him to be in a small part of the movie rather than a big part of the movie. But he's in the whole movie,
Yes.
effectively.
Yeah.
He's as close to a main character as we get.
As we
So
get.
I don't
Because this
understand
movie
that.
is constantly forgetting who its main character should be.
Right, and that is a problem. That is a mark against the movie.
Yeah.
I like that. I mean, we're back in a tunnel in an asylum.
Yeah.
So we're cycling through those Halloween films that no longer exist.
Mhm.
So, particularly the ones Miramax made,
Right.
which is like we're thinking of Smith's Grove in the original, but also the Cult of Thorn. I mean, is just as present here. I think in the
Mhm.
way that these tunnels are shot.
Absolutely.
I love the fact
But
that
I kind of liked the dialogue. That voiceover of Jamie Lee Curtis. About the door and all that.
I gotta tell you, it's having seen it, having watched these films together, it's my preferred Jamie Lee Curtis voiceover
Right.
of these final 5 films. I love the fact that we track past a man in a wheelchair who looks just like John Carpenter as we see his creator credit on screen. That can't be an accident.
Right.
And there's a lot of, obviously there will be very soon a lot of retconning,
Oh, yeah.
like done very fast.
My note is I called it a retcon extravaganza.
It is. But at this point, you sort of, it actually feels continuous because you're sort of like, well, this is this is
Well,
where
because
Laurie would be
because
she
yeah.
took a cop's gun and cut a man's head off.
Right.
So
What
we're
else
kind
can
of
you do?
we're following her psychonarrative. This is before we know the fact that she's killed a completely innocent EMT worker, which no one saw coming.
No one saw coming. I got a question for you.
Okay.
I've seen this movie, I don't know, at least a half a dozen times.
Yeah, probably I'm the same.
And until last night, thinking about the movie, because we have this idea of the EMT with a crushed larynx, right?
Uh-huh. Of course.
So he can't speak. He can't say,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm not Michael Myers."
And that's why he was lovingly reaching out.
My question is, literally until last night, I don't know how, it's like a magic trick that this movie performed, because until last night, I thought, instead of reaching out, why the fuck aren't you just taking off that mask?
Yes. Okay. Well, there was probably a deleted scene where Michael Gorilla glued it to his face or something like that.
That was the same thought I had. I just pictured him with like the crazy glue.
Well, the elephant in the room here is that this was not even though it seems like an invention of this movie.
No, it was
this
an invention
retcon.
of the last movie.
It was an invention of the last movie. It was the only way they could get
Yeah.
Mustafa Akkad to sign off on Michael Myers dying was to film this fake
and they had
ending.
finished filming and went back, like literally the day after, I think,
Yeah,
to film Michael Myers standing with a knife,
yeah.
just without his mask on. Still pretty suspicious in a courtyard full of people.
Yeah. So that placated him, but that became that, and they had a contractual obligation for Jamie Lee Curtis to appear in 30 seconds of the next movie, and they managed to negotiate a few more minutes out of her.
Yeah.
And that's what we have here. This
And
first
I
50
also will
minutes
say
is
this:
that.
I don't think I was really looking on this watch, and it doesn't seem to me like she's phoning it in.
Oh God, no!
She gives a fine performance.
I'll go you one better. I think this is where she and Rosenthal basically cast off the specter of Laurie in Halloween 2. Because she's when you see her kind of semi-comatose in the psych ward, you're like, here we go again.
Yeah.
Old Rosenthal likes to put Laurie in a hospital bed
he really
so she
likes
can't
her
and
not
drug her up
moving.
and drug her up so she can't do anything. And she springs into action in a way that I think is a specific riposte to that criticism.
Yeah.
I mean, she does end up dying in the process, but not without a fight.
Yeah, but also in a classic horror way, making stupid choices.
Yeah. The nurses here are a special guest exposition.
This is what I was just gonna bring up. I like nothing more than, well, you'll know all the gossip soon enough.
You know what I wrote here? In defense of this, given that it is special guest exposition.
Yeah.
I sort of said it's organic-ish. Like at least one of them doesn't know the story.
Yes.
At least
right.
there is a like, oh no, tell me. It's not like
right.
I have much worse examples in the next film
Where
of
both
exposition.
people know and are still talking about
Yeah,
it.
when people are saying, "Of course you remember that," and
Oh yeah,
you
and didn't he
you
do
remember
this?
when you
Yeah.
remember when you were president of the United States? That kind of
Right.
dialogue. But here, it's like one of them genuinely doesn't know and wants to find out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not bad exposition. It's not great, but it's not bad. and it's not exposition because it's posing as exposition and recap, but
Yeah.
it actually. It is reinventing everything that happened at the end of the last film. It's many imbasses all at once.
Yeah.
So
It's
fine.
Yeah, I mean, special guest exposition followed by it's always straight because the last movie did this as well. there's this moment where Laurie's looking out the window and she sees Michael Myers just standing there staring at her.
Yeah.
And then we cut to Laurie and cut back outside, and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Which would seem to denote that she's hallucinating, except he is there.
Yeah, he's there. Well, I mean, I think the way that they rewrite franchise history here is a perfect opportunity to introduce an entirely new and new-looking Michael Myers.
Yes. The crew
and
cut.
And I don't know if you want to talk masks this early, but whereas the H2O mask had absolutely no contours, this mask has too many contours.
Too much. Too many.
It's too many contours. It really, I mean, it looks like...
You know what else I noticed about this mask? They painted in the eyebrows brown.
My God.
Doesn't help. It's not good.
God.
And there are so many moments where it almost looks like he's got a flat top.
Yes.
Oh,
at one point there were so many ridges in the mask. I thought, did instead of using Shatner, did we like use a chimp's mask instead as the template?
And it doesn't help to watch him walk through a door.
Yes. I don't know. I mean, after seeing that Amityville 2 where, it's sort of like Steadicam, but you have to open the door, I'm like,
Yeah.
Fine. But why not, And then we get LL Not Cool J.
Right.
One of this guy's, let's have another African American security guard. The last time it works.
Well, we get some classic Rick Rosenthal watching Michael Myers on the CCTV.
Yeah, definitely.
He loves that.
He does.
And then of course Michael is going to get both of these guards, but this is the weakest part of this entire front scene for me because you can physically see the room. So the black guard in astonishingly
LL Not Cool J.
LL Not Cool J has to stop at the candy machine because he hasn't had dinner. The other guard is who they think they're getting the John Wayne Gacy guy back into his room.
Harold.
And we hear a terrible, frightening scream.
Mm-hmm.
Now, LL Not Cool J gets from his candy machine into that room in under 10 seconds. And in that time, Michael Myers has beheaded someone, laid his body on the floor, put his head in the dryer, started the dryer, and kind of climbed up into the rafters.
Yeah.
All of which you could see from the hallway you're entering from.
Yeah.
And the movie doesn't really hide that fact, but still tries to get like him creepily walking up to the dryer and opening the door and, oh my God, the head. Meanwhile, he's lowering down just like he did in the last movie and he trips over a body, but now he's not behind him anymore.
He's using his new descending from the rafters superpower that he gained in H2O.
Right. Yes.
Also, what is up with all the beheadings? Why has decapitation becomes Michael's go-to kill
his
method?
go-to kill? He's not. This is not the only time he's going to do that in this movie.
You mentioned the John Wayne Gacy guy.
Yes.
Harold. This is probably my favorite thing about this part of the movie.
Right.
This guy. I mean, it's the beginning of the meta part of this movie, right? Because we he's obsessed with famous serial killers, but we also know that is standing in for fandom of the Halloween franchise as well, like the people who are Michael Myers nuts, and talk about kill counts and all that sort of stuff. And here's this guy who's relating these true crime statistics.
Yeah.
I think it's. You're absolutely right that this scene has nothing to do with the rest of the movie, but this is kind of as close as we get because it's
sure.
Like it's about the media world around serial killers.
It's about the media world, and then
which is what the rest of the movie is going to be about.
I mean, we'll get to it, or I'll just say it now. We also have this. I love the idea that Michael Myers feels the need to frame him.
Because... You see, that's the weird thing. Like, I read that in Taking Shape, and that was the first time I clocked that. It's absolutely true. It makes total sense.
Oh, I remember clocking it the first time I saw this movie.
But I actually saw it.
Michael Myers doesn't care.
But I saw it as a kind of entirely about fandom. Like, you know,
Oh, like just
here's the,
here,
you know, it's
here's
like,
your souvenir.
it's like, you know, you're sort of like, you're such a, you know, basically paying back the fan. It's like giving him his autograph,
Yeah.
basically. Which I guess it does work on two levels, but yeah, the literal meaning of that is like, because no one's like, hey, by the way, Michael Myers just kind of worked his
Right.
way through a sanatorium, so maybe pull the plug on this Dangertainment haunted house for maybe 1 year.
Yeah.
So you're
But that's
absolutely
literally the only reason for it, because we're the rest of the movie is going to be reality TV based, and
yeah.
if they think Michael Myers is out and about,
Yeah.
then they won't be able to go into the
true.
house.
I like the and you know, and it's fair to say that there's a lot of interplay between what is real and what is fake, what is mediatized and what is reality. In this, that's how this movie works, and this is probably the first moment of that. And you know, let's not forget that, you know, Michael has to use the fake knife. Like,
Right.
because he gave this knife away, he then has to use a knife that was planted by people who are making a reality show.
Yeah.
So that kind of slippage and interplay between real and fake here, and the fact Michael Myers is a fictional serial killer listed alongside a number of real serial killers.
Yes. Right.
I think thematically this is as close as a through line to the rest of the film as you get in this sequence.
in this part.
So
Now
I
let me ask you
appreciate
this
that.
though. So, you know, we know that Michael does his run through the door bit,
Mhm.
and then he starts chasing Laurie, who hangs him up on the roof.
Yeah.
And you had that nice little bit of exposition from the nurses saying, yeah, they keep finding her on the roof to set this trap, obviously. And then she
They're
doesn't
doing
trust
their jobs as special
Yeah.
guest imposition. I don't know what
Michael
you're talking
Myers. You know, we've talked before about wily Michael Myers and
Yeah.
all of his plans. And of course, he kind of grabs at his mask as though he might not be Michael Myers. So she has to check just to make sure.
about. Yeah.
And he takes her over the edge and stabs her in the back. Now, what do you make of this kiss? She kisses him before she falls.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's this is the thing, and it's interesting to see the Taking Shape's take on that they buy the idea that by reframing Michael Myers' death as the EMT worker, that the final seconds of H2O make more sense. But to me, it already made sense.
Mhm.
That was a brother reaching out for comfort.
Yeah.
From his sister, and I guess this is an attempt, having retconned that, they have to do their own version of that in this movie.
And that's this kiss?
Yeah, and you know, it again. I think, you know, we already talked about aspects of storytelling that this movie is kind of lumbered with, that it has to deal with. But there's one in the overall franchise, which is that these two are brother and sister, and that's got to read sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And you either do away with it, which is what the next trilogy does, or you kind of make it work. And I think both H2O and this film within a film, inside Halloween Resurrection, is actually quite good at sort of making that feel like in another
It does
reality.
feel familial.
In another reality, these two, you know, they would just be like bickering brother and sister, but
Right.
they really do love each
I'll
other.
tell you what I
mean,
do like,
completely
though.
disingenuous, but you know, the idea of them as brother and sister is disingenuous.
Yeah.
So.
I'll tell you the last thing I do like, though, is that shot of her dropping.
Yeah.
It's a good shot.
I think this is I think this is fine. You know, I mean, I think it. Again, like, and if it's interesting. I mean, this is an internet-based film, but it's kind of it's in a period before we like started putting out short movies that would act as teasers to releases.
Yeah.
Because that feels like what this is. And it would have worked beautifully in that context.
Right.
It's like something you downloaded from iTunes.
Before you went
to
into
see
the theater.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
but it does, it does its job, and I like the button of Michael giving his knife to Harold, and that it obviously it sews up this part of the movie and make sure that it doesn't interfere with the rest of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
But and it introduces the idea of Michael as both a real and a fictional serial killer within the world of this movie, and I think that's actually really well done. Although we fade to the title, even though we've already had the opening credits.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it might have been better for this to be, because it's not even a cold open. I mean, as you said, it's not even a cold open,
right?
In the context of the film, aside from the fact that it is a completely its own entity.
And
it comes
before
after
the
title sequence.
But it comes before.
It's sandwiched between.
It comes after all the
sequences.
credits, but before the title, and yet is not a cold open. All
so
right.
It would have been more. I definitely would have been more powerful to be an absolutely ice cold open, as opposed to a lukewarm one.
All right, well, let's take a break.
Yeah, we're through the first 15 minutes.
We're through the first movie of this.
We've covered an entire movie in this segment.
We're through the first movie of these two movies in one movie.
And you know what?
Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing Halloween Resurrection, the 2002 internet/reality television minded film of Rick Rosenthal. So when last we left, we finished the first movie of this 2-part movie.
Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. Except we didn't mention basically the most important aspect, which is that Laurie Strode dies.
She does die, yeah.
Which is a big, it's what we might call a big swing.
Our bad.
It's what we might call a big swing, were it not inevitable that she would, because she was contracted for literally minutes of the film. And she was really doing it as a favor to the producers, appearing at all. But it's a good send off.
She's still the bottom of that knife on the poster.
She went down swinging.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she was supposed to return at the end of the film to save Sarah.
Well, that was an idea of the producers, and she said, "Fuck no."
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's the right call. As much of a con as it is that she's in this movie at all.
Right.
I'm glad that there isn't a needless resurrection.
Yeah.
Beyond the film itself, which is a needless resurrection.
Well, it's funny because this movie feels like it supposes that you have to contend with the last movie.
Yeah.
And you don't have to. This could be a different timeline.
Yeah,
this series doesn't care.
But we just did that. I mean, they need to, so basically, can you imagine you've just done a movie that reset the franchise, and the next movie you're going to do it again.
Right.
So that is why this interquel exists, is to smooth the transition between the two movies, because they're so desperate not to have to reset again after only one movie. I think that's a big part.
I guess maybe I'm retconning for the series itself, because the series resets so many times
Oh,
that
yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck do you care about resetting?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Well, so
you're not
we're
wrong,
at
but-
Haddonfield University,
Yes.
and my note is that Sackhoff is apparently a compulsive signer-upper, signing up her friends for things they don't want to do, including going into
Well-
a murderer's house.
First of all, we're after taking a film off, we're back in Haddonfield,
Right.
right? And this is so H2O is the real outlier because it doesn't take place anywhere near Haddonfield.
Right.
Closest we get is it's just the state that it's
Mhm.
in. And we're also another kind of reset or callback, if you like, is we're back in the classroom discussing a book that is highly relevant to what's about to happen in the
Right.
film.
Per always in these
Now,
movies.
there are no irrelevant.
What did we get in the last one?
classroom
Frankenstein, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're never reading something that won't in some way play into what's going
Of
on.
course.
There are
And
no
I believe the
irrelevant
professor
books
in this
how
one
we-
is actually Rick Rosenthal.
Oh, right.
So he's got his Hitchcock moment. Way more than
does,
walking a dog. Now, listen, I mentioned earlier that this movie has 12% on Rotten Tomatoes,
Yeah.
and I can't help but think, because we're getting into the reality TV portion of this movie
Yes.
and its influence on culture at that time.
Yeah. Mhm.
So my question to you is, do you think that 12% is directly related to backlash against that specifically? Why are
It could.
why are we talking?
I mean,
why are we,
Yeah.
kind of leaning
Yeah.
into this terrible thing that's ruining our children's lives?
Oh, interesting. Well, I mean, it's unnervingly accurate and prophetic, isn't it?
Yeah,
About
that's what I mean. So
how, and it acknowledges it. I think it's ahead of the game in acknowledging because it's still 2002, or we're in the first decade of the internet being a mass medium,
Mhm.
and this movie seems to appreciate when many others in culture don't.
Yeah,
that
right.
internet culture will overtake our way of behaving.
absolutely,
Everything
for
to
the
do
characters
with the...
in the film too. Like
Yeah, exactly.
right.
Well, that's it. I mean, the is it Deckard? Is that his name?
Yes. Well,
The-
he's the fake, not
Yeah.
fake, but he's the high school boy who is
I mean,
definitely
think of-
lying to his friend. And despite saving her life, she still has the right at the end of this movie to say, "You've been lying to me this whole time, you fucking piece of shit."
Yeah. But that's the thing, everything that's going on with that character, he's creating a fake identity online.
Yeah, right.
To try and impress a woman. He's
He has this
foregoing
romantic notion of it.
Yeah.
Of
And
being like
he's
a knight who just writes letters.
Yeah, that's nice. And he's and it is kind of quaint, but also you see him foregoing social interactions to be on the internet, to be like an insular, an introvert.
Well, when he goes to that party, he is by
internet user.
himself, and he literally draws everybody else from the party in.
Yeah.
So they all become
So,
him.
Right. So I actually
And
think
this, I think it's funny that this movie definitely hooked into an idea that culture didn't understand at the time,
Definitely.
and became something that is so prevalent even today.
Yeah, and
Credit where credit is
Obviously.
due.
credit where credit is due, and obviously there are elements of the whole Dangertainment storyline
Mhm.
that are pretty kind of hokey and cheesy, but as a concept, again, it's essentially saying that the stuff that you get sold as being reality television is largely constructed, and again, it took us years to figure that out. We had to go through lots of lawsuits and people sort of saying they're being misrepresented. And people being coming out and saying they're being exploited and mentally abused. Like before before the ramifications of that, the toxicity of
Right.
that, kind of came out, and this movie knows it right away.
Mhm.
You know, this understands that right away, and I guess that is where Larry Brand as a screenwriter was coming from.
That's
And
the way
some
I
of that
understood it.
still
Yeah,
carries through, and I think a lot of it still carries through in the movie.
it does. Yeah,
I'm not saying that the movie does as much of it as it could with this idea, but it does something with this idea.
yeah. It even has
It
has moment because there's cultural appropriation through the two
well, I
teenage
think
costumes.
I don't think that's acknowledged. I don't think that's.
But there
acknowledged.
is
I don't
one
think-
moment, Tom, where somebody else at the party looks at them and says, "Nice costume." And I thought, is that a
No. Because it's-
commentary?
Because it's Pulp Fiction, so you know the Weinsteins have said, "Let's put in a plug for Pulp Fiction," and they're like, "Really?
It's
That
almost a
1994
decade
film
later,
that-
though.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly. That's why I'm suspicious that it was a deliberate attempt to talk about cultural appropriation.
That was one of my questions for you. Like, was
No.
that character
No,
commenting on the appropriation?
no. As there's a white guy with a Jerry curl wig and a comb in his hair. It's minstrel
All
is
right.
what it is, I think. But anyway, we'll get
get
there.
there.
We will get there. But
It occurred to me that there are a sect of certainly reviewers that probably were predisposed to hate this movie
Yes.
because they hate reality television.
definitely, when it's
Didn't
a
understand what
satire,
would become so important for their medium,
Yeah. and it's
like through Rotten Tomatoes and the internet.
And the attitude of the movie is that, this is that media is in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
What does real and fictional mean anymore?
Yeah, right.
And that's an important debate to have. So it's not.
Well, we
I mean,
talked
yeah,
about that
there-
idea of an Orson Welles and War of the Worlds, and convincing some people that something fake was real, and that this movie
Yeah.
can't convince people that something that's supposed to be fake is real.
Well, that's it. And the lineage of this movie. It starts with War of the Worlds. There's a 1992 British television film called Ghostwatch, which this is very similar to, which is a faked reality show set in the most haunted house in Britain.
Yeah.
And they used similarly to this, they used real TV presenters to sell the idea that this was real, but it was just scripted drama, scripted supernatural drama.
I believe there's even.
And-
Sorry, go ahead.
No, well, and this is exactly 10 years after that, and 7 years before Paranormal Activity,
Mhm.
and Paranormal Activity was openly influenced by Ghostwatch, so this sits in between those
Yeah.
two, and it's very like both of them. So the lineage of it is actually quite an interesting form of media
Right.
that is sort of formally experimental and challenging. And again, not to say that this movie is, but that's the territory it's in, whether you like it or not. and
Right.
and if you're dismissing it on the grounds that it's an empty, like a sort of, I guess, like an exploitational use of the modern trope of internet and reality TV just to get a movie made. Okay, there's a part of it that's clearly that, but it does go deeper than that.
No, and I
sometimes in
think
the
it.
movie.
You draw that lineage out long enough to today, and I
Yeah.
believe there's a show on HBO Max called Los Spookies
Mhm.
that I haven't started yet, but as I understand it, the characters are kind of brought in to make something seem real that is fake in the supernatural world, and yet there are supernatural things happening to them all the time in their personal lives that they just ignore and
of
don't
course,
realize are happening.
And the two big elephants in the horror genre canon, Cannibal Holocaust and Blair Witch Project.
Mm-hmm.
Which both of those movies this is drawing.
Yeah.
And we're in the era of after post Blair Witch, we're camcorder fiction, but again, like, this is an update of that, isn't it? Because we're not using camcorders,
Right.
we're using webcams, and I don't know when people started talking openly about webcams in films, and then started using them as a sort of stylistic
Choice,
alternative.
yeah.
But I don't think it was much earlier than this.
Right.
So that deserves a little bit of credit. And also, Rosenthal talks about the restraint with which he wanted to use the webcam aesthetic.
Yeah.
And I mean, probably in retrospect, he should have done slightly more.
Because there are times where even the filmed portions don't look much better than the webcam stuff anyway.
But I like the fact that he's at least monitoring the idea.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's still a film. It's still a Hollywood studio film, and you want it to look
like that.
You can't. Yeah, and I mean, Paranormal Activity will be literally.
We'll
all
change
footage.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Blair Witch Project, the Blair Witch product of the Blair Witch Project was doing.
Pull the cord on the back.
Was doing that with
camcorders. On the Blair Witch product, pull the cord on the back. She'll speak to you and put you in the corner.
And it's there's a way in which you can see that this is both a success and a failure, because sometimes the horror film aspect of this and the reality show aspect of this work at odds.
Yeah, they I was just going to say that they are grating against each other.
Yeah. And not in like an interesting, purposeful way.
Right, exactly. They are actively fighting against one another.
When you get to Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks...
I was going to say, we're at that portion of the movie where we meet, basically, our heroes? Question mark?
But these are two characters played by two actors who lend the reality entertainment show part of the film authenticity.
Yes, they do. Yeah,
but in doing so, they damage the film's authenticity as a Halloween movie.
Right.
Because they're not actors. They're
right.
not. They're not actors, and they don't feel like they really belong in a Halloween film. Yeah. So. And also, and then we get into this montage of interviews with the people who are going into the Myers house as part of this Dangertainment webcast. And, you're thinking immediately, this is the era of mockumentary media. This is both the American and British Office. Soon we'll have, Modern Family. Like every other sitcom will be done in the mockumentary style. Sure. And this is clearly.
I mean, we got a lot of popular Christopher Guest movies coming out at this time.
Exactly, yeah. So this movie has its finger on the button, conceptually, but also stylistically.
In a way, it's not really given credit for.
No,
but I guess because as we've stated, it's not a good movie. But
well, back to the Mortal Kombat. When someone's doing martial arts moves in your face, you it's difficult to tell what's going on. Yes. But again, what we didn't mention is that at the beginning of the film, our main character is in a psychology class, reading Jung's The Collective Unconscious. In this interview montage, Michael Myers is referred to as the great white shark of our unconscious. So we're giving voice to both the kind of cultural and psychological readings of Michael Myers as well. And this is kind of carrying on directly, I think, from what H2O was doing.
Okay,
There's a lot of psychoanalysis in there too. Right. This idea of kind of deconstructing Michael Myers psychologically.
Well, you know what's interesting is
to what the next three films are going to be, which is de-psychologize Michael Myers.
And what's interesting is that we're sort of there's a lot, the one part we were just saying that these two things are grating against each other, but one thing that I did think that was kind of funny in that sequence is that we're deconstructing the psychology of Michael Myers, and yet that whole scene boils down to one character's scream, which means money for Busta Rhymes. And he's like, this is everything I could fucking hope for. Yeah. And so those two...
Well, that's when he has that weird word soup quotable that I did at the beginning, which I don't know what he's trying to say, but I think it is something along the lines of what you just said.
Yeah, essentially
in that one word.
Yeah, but that's a little more interesting than I think I gave it credit for. Where you're not the consumerism, but the sort of capitalistic nature of Busta Rhymes' character, boiling down all this psychology into one final scream, which is dollar signs for him.
Right, and that it's another way to look at this movie is it's a kind of cathartic movie that's about dealing with the fact that we have commodified violence and killing, and like how do we square that with ourselves?
Yeah.
And interestingly, earlier drafts, like the earlier Larry Brand drafts of the screenplay, would pay far more attention to that, where Freddie would sort of come out, Busta Rhymes would kind of come out of the movie realizing the error of his ways.
Yes.
Which
you get a little bit of a flavor of that at the end. I mean, it
is very much a flavor.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not going to call it an honest attempt.
But, Busta Rhymes is rewriting his character's arc so that he is invincible. So he can't have that vulnerability. But that's clearly, that's clearly on the mind of this movie. And I think that means, and it's interesting. It comes out sometimes.
Did you notice a little anti-vegetarian propaganda?
Oh, where?
In that sequence as well?
Oh,
it's from Sean Patrick Thomas, where he's talking about Michael Myers probably just didn't get enough protein.
Yeah, his special appearance. I kind of like that. So overall, I'm like, why is this guy a chef? Like, why is this guy a chef in training, and what does this have to do with the rest of the movie? But
because nobody but a chef would know how to throw spices into Michael's eyes.
Well, he does. I guess it is he is like the detective, isn't he? Because he's like, these spices are fresh.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. He knows the difference between fresh and old spices. But I like that part because his theory about why Michael does what he does is as valid as any other.
Absolutely,
right? And
you're right.
It's like why don't we see Michael through this food prism? I mean, sure, that makes as much sense as anything else. He ate that dog, so he was clearly hungry.
Right. Well, and so we get to the house, and I love that when we get to the house, that Busta Rhymes is besieged by at least 4 reporters.
Well, so this is
sort of the open commentary on the capitalism over misery, right?
The problem is it doesn't make literal sense in this historical moment.
No,
it? Right. The whole point of the movie is about the rise of digital media, which is counteracts the death of traditional media, and yet this movie presupposes that if someone does a webcast from a house, the press
comes. Exactly. Excuse me, I have a question, please.
Yeah, I know. So the movie's just like again, it's like we're caught between two poles of like, this is how you do things in an old-fashioned horror movie, but you can't do it in a movie that's about how media is changing. Over.
Yeah.
Yes. And going back to the Orson Welles of it all, which Larry Brand was explicit about. He worked for
him. Yeah, he was a driver.
Yeah. And it's when they're editing together those grainy digital point of views from the webcams, it made me in a split screen. It sort of made me think of another Orson Welles project, an unrealized project. He wanted to film a movie that was entirely in first person POV, an adaptation of Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. So I think that is at play too. Like this
That's
idea.
Interesting.
I mean, I think maybe Rosenthal was a little overcautious about this aspect of the film and not wanting there to be too much of this webcam footage,
right?
Kind of driving the movie, like distinguishing it from Blair Witch Project and from maybe a more experimental movie.
I mean,
than the one he wanted to make. But
speaking to Larry Brown or Brand's, no, I mean you said Orson Welles' idea of that first person. I think for those that have seen Hardcore Harry, bad idea.
Well, that's why it never happened. I think in his hands, he might have been able to pull
You're
it
right.
off.
He is Orson Welles.
He is Orson Welles. But I see that lineage too here.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this sort of language of modern day reality television, I think is actually represented quite accurately. They talk about, you'll be voted off the island and
Yeah.
It's kind of, you know, these
They are speaking to the
the
moment.
way that's, you know, that these people who are in the house are not characterized very well, but
No.
something that you can, but something that you don't agree too quickly. But one of the ways in which they're sort of interesting is that they are largely fame-seeking, or at least one of them is a fame-seeking reality contestant, and that's something that you can hang the characterization on that is quite interesting, because that, you know, that is a character from
I think you
popular
could say that
culture
about all of them except Sarah.
all of them, yeah.
Sarah just sort of found herself there. Because, as I said,
Right.
her friend is a compulsive signer-upper. But once we get into the house,
Yeah.
this is the weakest... Well, one aspect of this movie...
Don't speak too
Yeah,
soon.
one aspect of this movie...
We've still got Buster Rhymes.
I know.
Cut to come.
So, in terms of the horror of the racketing up of tension and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
this is where some bad filmmaking is going on, because fake things are happening to characters, and whenever something fake happens, it brings, you know, there's a scream and it brings everybody to one location.
Yeah.
And then real things happen that produce broken mirrors and screams and like blood and everything.
Yeah.
And nobody seems to hear it.
Right. Yes.
You know?
Yeah, there is a I think you've identified a problem with cinematic space in this movie.
Yes.
I think you've got it. That is an overall weakness.
And
And I
yet,
guess-
there are things that I really like. You know, this house looks like the house that I remember from the first movie.
Which is thematically makes sense, because it's supposed to be like a hyper-real version of the real of the house itself, right? It's a mediatized
Yes.
version of it. It's like a, you know, if you
But there are things in the house that I'm curious about. Like, I mean, did Dangertainment
so am
build
I.
that well key thing with the fake torture chamber down below?
No. Well, so I thought,
Because that's
to
a
me,
lot
it
of
read-
work.
It made me think. I mean, I've always thought that was the movie telling. No one else seems to think this, so I must be alone. That it's telling us Michael's been living under the house the whole time, which I think is
Well,
a
that's the
great
other thing, though.
idea.
So you have the two characters who, by the way, decide to fuck in a torture room, but
Yeah,
then the wall caves in on them with bodies,
yeah.
and I'm forgetting. Is it Nora? No, that's Tyra Banks. Jen. No, that's Katie Sackhoff. Who's the redhead?
I've been trying to remember her name too.
Ah.
Donna.
Donna,
No,
you're right,
Donna.
Donna.
Yes, Donna. Daisy McCracken.
Yeah, Daisy McCracken. What a name.
I know.
Get McCracken.
She's great. I like her. Until she eventually succumbs to the predator. I think she,
Yeah.
I think her reaction, you know, the way that she fights off her objectification is a really good message of like feminism
I do
and higher
too.
education.
Yes.
Until
Until
she succumbs to a predator.
it. Yes.
But it's a, you know, a 2002 movie, so we
you
can't-
have to lower your expectations.
yeah.
But when that fake wall comes in and buries them in the fake skeletons, which has all been set up by Dangertainment,
Yeah.
then there's another wall behind that. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, now wait a second. Like, if you were setting up that wall, you would see that wall behind it with the hole in it
Yes.
that leads to Michael Myers' bed.
Yep.
So you got to do a lot
Again,
of
space.
Yeah.
It's a space issue.
Yeah.
It's. I agree with you. I think this is about where we start to cross cut with the party.
Yeah, because the the high school boys are at their high school party.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you see two male football players dancing with each other and bumping chests.
Oh.
That seemed more progressive than 2002 was going to allow.
Yeah, and this is where we get the sort of the meta audience,
Yeah.
right? Like it's going to be an audience. So we're an audience watching an audience watch the webcast, which
Not the most
Again,
exciting
it-
thing.
Well, it's
very
good.
difficult
I
to
mean,
put on film people watching film and assume that
Yeah.
we're going to be interested.
And there's two ways you can look at this. I think you can look at it as feeding into the meta quality of the
You
film.
can, yeah.
Or you can sort of think of it as in that more sort of cynical P.T. Barnum, just a way to hype up the actual cinema audience. And so that, you filter our reactions as a movie
Yeah, but
audience who are all physically present.
As a movie-going audience, we know what they're seeing is real, and it takes them a long time to figure that out.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. But the moments where they're questioning the reality of the kill,
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting given the themes of the film.
Yeah, I do too.
And the sort of you watch, direct address to us, to the in-world audience, us at the same time. It's kind of an interesting interplay. I mean, not all is done with it that it could be done with it.
Sure.
But it's not bad. I like that dimension to the film.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think it...
You know what else it made me wonder about whether this film was ahead of the game on is escape rooms. When did they start
Oh, yeah.
becoming
That's
popular?
interesting.
Because this to me is the classic escape room scenario, is it not? I mean, there's especially when you get into the key to the
I didn't
hatch.
make that... Yeah, that key part, I really should have hooked into that. I never gave it a second thought. Because this guy has had nothing but sex on his mind, and he turns away from possible sex with Donna. By the way, that's Luke Kirby, who's Jim, and he's Lenny Bruce on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah, he's in a lot of David Simon stuff as well. He was in The Deuce, and
at any rate, he goes. Yeah. He thinks he turns down a Donna kiss.
I mean, we've got Starbuck in this.
That's
movie,
true. Yeah, we do. to go get a key.
Mm-hmm.
To open up that secret fake torture room that might be real, but might have been built by Busta Rhymes. It's hard to say.
And this, it's again, it makes me think there are definitely. I don't know if we've gone full haunted, theme park haunted house in this series yet.
Yeah, right.
That's another level that this idea works on.
But I do feel, as I'm watching it, I feel like the movie is struggling to keep Michael Myers out of their line of vision.
I didn't even need to finish the sentence. Sorry.
Yeah. So to keep him out of the character's way for as long as they try to keep him out of the way.
Yeah.
It struggles. You can feel the strain.
You can definitely feel the strain. I think this film it's not as bad as it could have been.
Right.
But
it's also not as bad as people think it is.
It's not as good as it should be given the content.
Yeah.
Given the concept.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. This is, well, I mean, at least in my notes, this is where Buster and Michael
meet each other.
And that
meet
he's
cute.
Twisted. Yeah, and that they've twisted the plot so Busta Rhymes looks incredibly brave standing up to Michael Myers, even though it's just a total coincidence. He thinks it's someone else.
He's tapping him on the
forehead.
forehead.
There's no way he would talk like that to the actual
right.
Michael Myers. And he goes around saying he's the only person that ever got Michael Myers to back off. It's always like that's his like main story whenever he meets anyone.
But my question for you is, I mean, is that moment even earned? Like, why would Michael Myers walk away in that moment?
He's confused. He's confused as to why Busta Rhymes is in his movie.
Like the rest of us?
Well, like in the second meeting between the two where you get the kung fu.
Yeah.
He cocks his head. He does the signature cock of, dog cock of the head.
Right.
And it's the first time that I understand what that means, because he's like literally
what the fuck
what
is
happening?
this in front of me?
I mean, if you know, we don't know the exact instances of how Busta Rhymes commandeered the storyline to this film.
Right.
I suspect this is one of those instances where he's like, I refuse to be like, I refuse to leave this scene as the loser.
Yeah.
It feels very much like that because it doesn't make. You're right. It doesn't make sense in any other way. And then he has bragging rights.
But I also
It's like,
think I also think there's a portion of this movie where they are going for comedy in a way tonally that doesn't match the rest of the film, and this is one of those moments. I think they meant it as something to be funny.
It's interesting that the next film doubles down on this exact moment, given how unpopular and unsuccessful it is.
Mm.
But that's another question. But I completely agree. I guess it isn't a movie that is particularly when this movie goes for comedy, it generally fails pretty spectacularly.
Yeah. I mean, but we're not there yet. But the ending, especially.
Yeah.
I tell you what, why don't we take another break?
Let's that's just occurred to me.
Yeah, let's reset.
Yeah. New timeline.
We'll take a little break, everyone.
Michael Myers is a sperm. I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing Halloween Resurrection after our self-imposed break and reset. Not unlike these movies.
Well, if if this section of the movie is anything to go by,
Right.
we're keeping the Cult of Thorn storyline in canon.
Yeah.
Because there's tunnels under this house.
So this was my next question for you. What do you think of all these tunnels underneath Michael Myers' house?
I mean,
Is he a mason? What is going on? Because if it was like,
I mean, to me, it was just
like, you know, if it was a tunnel, if it was like a Stallone Last Blood tunnel,
yeah,
I think I might.
there's a lot of racism.
Yeah. Okay, but racism aside, I think I would believe it more. But there's brick in this thing.
Yeah.
There are gates.
I mean,
and...
it screams Curse of Michael Myers to me. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like, I got the overall impression, not thinking about it too hard, that, you know, we've got 20 years of Michael Myers activity to account for. He's been under the house the whole time, you know, and that's the sort of... I like that idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if the movie's fully committed to it in the way it needs to be.
I'd like to see a scene of him in the backyard, Andy Dufresne style, putting dirt out into the pasture through his pants.
I don't know. Maybe the tunnels go to Smith's Grove, and you know that's where that's where the cult is waiting for him. I don't know. That's what it feels. It feels like that they're leaning. I don't know if they're thinking ahead of movie, thinking we could develop this next time.
Because in a
Probably
classic genre sort of way, it would be really it's spooky, right? It could be very
not.
spooky.
Yeah. It's
if more was made
it's
out of it from the characters. Because Donna walks into it just sort of like, this is interesting.
But this is the thing, isn't it? That's the downside of this meta storyline.
Yeah.
Is that you've got to have a stylistic way of distinguishing what Busta Rhymes has put in the house to make it spooky versus what is organically making the house spooky. And they look exactly
the
same.
same. And the other part, too, is,
you
know, when Donna walks down the hall and she sees that kind of a Raggedy Ann doll with the 2 screws in its eyes. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of that scene in season 5 of The Wire where the editor is saying, how come every time I send this fucking photographer to a fire, I always see a burned doll
yes, exactly.
that he took out of his trunk. It felt just as placed as everything else Busta Rhymes had placed in the entire house.
Added to the storytelling problem of we never get a clear sense of like exactly when the Dangertainment tampering stops and where the Michael Myers living under the house, if indeed that is the case, begins.
And there are, like so much of this portion of the movie, there's convenient plot holes. Donna gets impaled on part of the bent fence. the iron fence, the wrought iron fence. But she conveniently doesn't see the ladder that Sarah sees later in the movie when she's stuck down there. I mean, it's just a foot away.
Yeah, it's like, it's sort of video game logic almost, isn't it? It's sort of like, it's like things that, space is changing all the time.
And I also love that ladder leads just right to the garage. You know, Michael was like, so I could be near my tools.
Right. Again, it's like the murder garage from Amityville.
There you
go. It's so. I've noticed as well that there's Jamie Lee Curtis's role in the film is not finished yet because we have to look at a photo of her.
Yeah, right. I knew. I actually have a note that you would have a note about that.
Yes. Even in a film in which she appears, there's still a photo of her.
Of course.
That's how
sequel-like this movie is.
Yeah, this is how strong the
sequel force in this movie is strong.
Yes, it is. I mean, I don't know if this is what you were alluding to in terms of, you know, Freddy's defense of the morality of what he's doing. Where he says that, this is entertainment.
You mean when they catch him?
Have some. Well, he talks about, I think, is it him talking to Sarah? He sort of says, I'm.
Well, there's that moment where he attacks 3 of them. And what my note in that scene was, he attacks them as Michael Myers. They kick him in the balls or something like that. And he says,
they do kick him in the balls.
Turn off your camera. And they all just immediately do so that they can have this private conversation.
Yeah. Well, because
if Michael Myers was in a mask and attacked me and said, turn off your camera, I'd be like, fuck you, Michael.
Yeah. Well, it's the, real versus fake Michael again.
Yeah, it is, yeah. But is that the moment you're talking about when he's saying, I have a robust end for us and, like, play along with me, or?
Yeah, he sort of says that,
because that's actually, now that I think, that's not an apology at all. That's let's keep doing it.
He says this is entertainment. Yeah. If we don't preset something, we run the risk of nothing happening, and who wants to watch that? Yeah, you get a real Al Capone's. And then in my mind I was like, what he's basically describing is Paranormal Activity. This hit movie from 7 years later. So Freddy, in addition to everything else, is completely wrong about the way that media is going.
That's great.
And it's I guess this is like the. You know, I think I said this before. They're using horror to make sense out of this changing landscape of media and broadcasting.
Sure.
He talks about the first internet Emmy, how
right.
the reality TV. Basically, we're trying to distinguish reality TV from cinema through this, and it's like, are the two bleeding into each other? Are they different? How are they different? And then it's just a bunch of knives and decapitations for a while.
Katie Sackhoff gets her sack off.
Great model head.
Yeah.
But why is this movie so obsessed with lopping people's heads off? It's like the French Revolution or something suddenly.
It's also, I have to imagine, very difficult to get through a whole neck and the bone with one kitchen knife.
Yeah. I don't think it comes off that cleanly.
No matter how strong you are. No matter what supernatural strength you have, but...
Yeah. And then Michael picks up the fake knife, and that becomes his real knife, which is a nice little circular... Again, as close as this movie gets to a through line.
Because we have that moment in which Sean Patrick Thomas, he gets nailed up against the door. These movies really have a real fetish with Michael pinning someone up against a door. I mean, straight from the first movie. So ever since that first movie, it feels like the calling card for all the other sequels is we got to have somebody nailed up against the wall.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Which, by the way, that's got to be a difficult thing to do. I don't think the body would stay there very long. Bodies are heavy.
I wonder why.
Way heavier than a one weight-bearing knife.
Yeah, true.
Even if Sean Patrick gets two knives, he gets two.
One area where the movie gets the future wrong is it depicts the internet as the solution to all our problems, as opposed to the cause of it. Because as long as weirdos are watching our every move online virtually, we're safe.
I noticed that there's one moment when she gets back in the house, and it's after Busta Rhymes has pushed him out a window or the balcony, where he hangs him. And then Michael cuts himself down, and they say he's back, he's in the house.
Yeah.
Or they say, where is he? And then the response on the, what is it, a Palm Pilot?
It's a Palm Pilot, yes.
The Palm Pilot says, in the house. And they turn around and Michael Myers is right there.
Yes.
I might have written right behind you.
Yeah. This is sort of interesting too, because it's sort of like it's like interactive media. They're trying to sort of do some form of interactive media within the frame.
Right, because this is the moment where everybody in the room gets on Deckard's side and is trying to help him help her.
Yeah.
Tell her this.
And it's a cross between, I think, the sort of, obviously like media is moving towards interactivity and the internet's a big part of that. But just in general, we're starting to embrace more interactive forms of media at this time. But also, if you look backwards and you look at like the tropes of horror cinema, then it's like it's just a technological version of you as the audience going, no, go there, no, don't go there, go here. It's like the fantasy of being able to instruct the characters away from their demise.
And they actually can,
which is part of the pleasure of watching horror films, is they're just using a Palm Pilot and a webcast to kind of cut out the middleman, basically. So I think it makes sense. I mean, obviously the Palm Pilot aspect of it is dated. Like I keep expecting him to write "Eat Up."
Well,
Martha.
I'll tell you the other thing that's dated, because to me the tragedy of this movie in bringing Busta Rhymes back in such a way where he's permeating everything. He's like we didn't mention it, but when he kicks Michael out that window, it's with kung fu, and.
Well, that's okay because it was set up earlier.
Of course,
in the movie
yes, I understand. I get a callback, Tom, but
I mean,
The one thing this
what more do you want? It was set up earlier in the movie.
I'll
Mike.
tell you what I want.
It didn't come out of the kung fu didn't come out of nowhere.
No, but I'll tell you what I do want. I want the actual heroine, the last girl of the film,
Yeah.
to actually have agency and be doing something. They take all
Yeah,
of
that's
that
the-
away from her and give it all to Busta Rhymes. She has to be saved by him at every moment.
Yeah,
And that doesn't sit very well with me.
yeah. That is exactly the problem with it. The image of him carrying out the final girl with a number of like action one-liners. It's not how it's supposed
Yeah,
to work.
right.
And
And
that's where
it's not
feels
helped
like
by
he's active. That's where it feels like he's actively harming
Yeah.
the film. I think.
and it's
rather than
well,
just, like-
and there are a couple of terrible choices. uh,
Oh,
because,
yeah.
there's a moment where she gets into the garage and Michael is chasing her. He's like, well, I got my tunnel, so he doesn't have to go up the ladder she went. So he comes back around through the front garage door, and she pulls out a chainsaw, which, in a sort of meta-textual way, kind of hearkening
Yeah.
back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think is kind of funny.
Definitely.
But it's not good
like
that the female
H2O
character.
acknowledged Jason, so now we're acknowledging Leatherface.
What's that?
I think that's it. H2O was acknowledged Jason, so
Yeah,
now we're
right.
acknowledging Leatherface.
But to me, it's also not helped that the female character loses a knife fight in which she has a chainsaw. And
apparently, if you bring a chainsaw to a knife fight,
you still don't win. Exactly. But then she gets knocked down, and there's literally like one sound mixer on top of her.
Mm.
And that's just too heavy for her to get off. She has conservatively about 20 pounds of weight on her back legs and can't
Yeah.
seem to manage to get it off of her and save herself.
But this entire sequence is cultivated to make Busta Rhymes look better.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
That's obvious.
that's the only objective of these scenes, and the sacrificial lamb is the final
Yeah.
girl who in both in this franchise and in horror in slasher cinema more generally has got to emerge triumphant in without anyone else's aid or help.
Well, and let's talk about let's also so there's that, but let's also frame it within the comedy that this movie's going for. There's one bit of comedy that I kind of like, and then all the rest of the comedy that I
interesting.
hate.
Do tell.
When she's upstairs looking around, like trying to get out of the house, she kind of walks back down the ladder that the American Pie kid was dead on. And
Yes.
she's about to get down the stairs, and it's actually, you think it's going to be Michael Myers, but it's Busta Rhymes that takes her,
Yeah.
and he like covers her mouth and brings her into the corner. And I kind of love that moment when he's like, oh my God, everybody's dead. We have to get the fuck out of here. Like, that to me is really funny. I thought that was a great bit of comedy.
It's funny when you say it. That's for sure. Well, you know what? I was so distracted by, when in seeing that scene, the first thing I thought was, does Busta Rhymes understand what whispering is? It's like, you don't need to breathe that heavily when you
Right.
whisper. That's not part of whispering.
That's great.
Yeah.
But the comedy
yeah,
that
so
doesn't
I-
work is this whole final fight because we bring back Kung Fu, which does
we
not
bring back
last
Kung
for
Fu.
long, so we have to go
No.
to electroshock into the balls,
Yeah.
followed by not that this is a comedic bit, but
Buster gets his backdraft.
Yeah,
moment when he
exactly.
brings Sarah out of the fire. But again, we're in the wrong genre. Total. We're in at least two genres we shouldn't be in. At this point. It's determined to make himself the hero of the movie at all costs. And again, it's like it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how LL Cool J worked in the
Right.
last movie. It wasn't that everything had to become subject to him. It's just that we liked the
liked
guy
that-
and
yeah,
we didn't want to see him
exactly.
die. He didn't need to come back and save the day. In quite the same way. I like the image of Michael being killed by the electricity.
I
and
did
the
too.
wires.
I actually quite like that. I think it worked pretty well.
Because, you know,
Kind
it
of
is an
reminds me
image
of Jaws
the,
too.
the internet kind of swallowing up the monsters of movie yesteryear.
And
I
you know
like
what
that.
else?
I think that's on message.
It reminded
for
me
this
of
movie.
two things. It reminded me of Jaws 2, and because the wires were all hanging down, it reminded me a little bit of Superman 3 and Vera.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Which is a good comparison because that is, you know, that's a supercomputer,
Right.
and here it's the internet that's killing him. How many times has fire been used to defeat Michael?
3.
And second question, how many times has it failed to do so?
3 and 3.
Yeah. Fair enough. No further questions.
Very good
Your
then.
Honor. I think it's interesting because we're not done with Busta Rhymes yet. Because
No.
you've got to talk to the physical
I mean,
press
well, first, we forgot that
who have come back.
we forgot his catchphrase. We
fucking
forgot his
webcast.
catchphrase in busting into the fiery garage, which was "Happy Halloween," or is it "Happy Halloween, motherfucker"? Trick or treat, trick or treat, motherfucker.
It was my quotable from our last
You're right.
from our ranking episode.
How could I forget? Trick or treat, because I think he
it's
says "Happy
because it's
Halloween"
forgettable,
later.
and oh yeah, well,
Followed,
I mean,
followed by he looks like a chicken fried motherfucker.
chicken fried.
There's a lot of
motherfucker.
motherfuckers
There's a lot
added
of
to the
motherfuckers.
dialogue.
And literally everything Buster says Michael Myers is. Literally everything Buster says Mike. He goes through a list of what Michael Myers
Yes,
isn't,
right.
and it's everything that he is.
Yes.
And because I know he wrote his own dialogue, I don't think the joke is on him. I think it is purely a
He
misunderstanding.
doesn't get it.
of
Yes,
what
exactly.
is going on in this movie. And he literally, like, even in World, he steals the limelight from Sarah. The press are
Yes,
about to
exactly.
address Sarah, and he just fucking interrupts and mansplains.
He says, "Hey, get away from her and talk
Yeah.
to me."
Oh, yeah. And so we see his face, right? At this
Well,
point?
kind of
Kind of.
melted.
And
A melted
I guess
mask
that
on
is
top
sort
of his face.
looping back to Laurie at the beginning of the movie. And again, this sort of theme of doppel. I guess thematically, the way that the mini movie plays into the
Mhm.
to the regular sized movie is this idea of mistaken identity and doppelgangers.
Yeah,
You know, there's like 2 or 3 different. There's a real Michael. There's a fake
Sure.
Michael. I'll throw that extends the entirety of
I
the
mean,
movie.
even in the mini movie, he's being mistaken for the other patient.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, right. It's also fascinating that this movie ends, given that it's directed by Rick Rosenthal, it ends exactly the same way Halloween 2 did.
I know. It's amazing.
Except with the good sense to put a nod into Michael being alive
Right.
after the hard work of
Busta.
like, you know, last time. I think that's a good choice to have him.
What do you make of
open his
What do you
eyes.
make of the idea of or at least Rick Rosenthal's want to send out 3 different endings, Clue style? I don't know if
I
a lot of
think it
people
would've
know
been-
that about this movie, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what he wanted to
I
do.
I think it would have been a fun sort of throwback to the kind of, you know, the sort of 1950s, you know, electrocuting seats.
I don't hate that
and
idea at
sort of-
all.
No, I don't. I don't hate anything, especially in, you know, 2000, in like the early 2000s, that brings the theatrical experience of cinema going front and
Mhm.
center. I think is a great idea.
Yeah.
Because you know we're about to lose that altogether, and in the next 20 years. So I think it would have been a really good marketing technique as well.
Right.
Obviously,
I'm surprised that
wha-
more movies haven't done this since Clue
Mhm.
did it.
Yes.
Although I do remember going to see Clue twice and seeing the same ending and being kind of pissed.
That's hilarious. So again, here's another interesting sort of timeline quirk.
Yes.
So So in the last film, Steve Miner did what Rick Rosenthal did in Halloween 2, which was to kill off Michael Myers definitively, and Loomis for that matter. And now Rosenthal's doing the opposite here, in that he's giving plausible deniability to Michael being alive. So it's just really interesting how having like this partial reset that we've done.
Yeah, but I think that probably partially speaks to where sequels in horror were in each time. I mean, at this time, well, I was about to say it's almost a foregone conclusion that you want the series to go on, but the last movie kind of played it fast and loose with that. At least the filmmakers knew what they wanted to do in the last movie, and the producer clearly wanted to do a different thing. Mustafa Akkad and
it's just about keeping it. It's just about keeping it as open.
Yeah.
Like,
but my point was
it's like you're keeping the tab. It's just keeping the tab.
The tab's open. But my point was, in the last one, John Carpenter, we know, wanted to end it so that he could go on to Season of the Witch and do sort of an anthology kind of thing, which of course backfired dramatically because by that point everybody loved Michael Myers. You can't do two Michael. You can do it after the first one. You can't have two and then try to start that.
I disagree with all of that, but carry on.
I'm saying that's what happened in real life.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Not inside my head,
yes,
but yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it is interesting, but I think it's, it's that you're right in the sense that at this point these kind of last second jump scares have just become like they're just part of the language of these kind of films. There's not, but in relation to the Halloween franchise, obviously there's a huge difference between making it seem as if Michael Myers is dead and opening the door to him being alive is like the difference between a lot of work for a lot of people.
Yes, right.
So even this, just him opening his eyes on the table, like somebody has got a week off where they wouldn't have it before.
All right. Now, you got a credit check for us?
I do, yes. One of the songs and just to, conform to expectations, one of the songs in the movie is called Moneypenny.
Hey.
By a band called Serotonin.
You snuck it in right at the last moment.
I did, yeah. So, so Bond does factor into this movie. Webcams supplied by.
Yes, right.
Now, I'm interested in knowing, is this just the webcams that we see on screen, or are these the webcams providing the image
right.
that we see?
Yeah.
Because because that's the difference between the cameras you're using to film and a prop. And I guess it's a testament to, in this film, there's a slippage between both.
Right.
Because of the meta quality of it. And all I have after that is it's pretty cool they managed to sustain the Halloween the Halloween theme throughout the credits without some awful piece
that's the next
of contemporary some awful piece of contemporary music. And there's a really bad one early in this movie that sounds like an actual drone sound. When they're doing the interviews, there's this kind of
and when we first go to the college,
which is what they called music in 2000.
Right, when we first go to the college and Sarah's walking down the halls, there's a nasty piece of music there.
Yeah. So again, good job, Halloween Resurrection. No one wants to hear anything other than that that Carpenter theme at the end of a Halloween.
That's all
movie.
we fucking need.
And you have the good sense to know this. But good.
overall good sense in short supply in this film.
This movie's better and funner to watch than people give it credit for.
Yeah, I have a really hard time thinking of it as a bad movie,
But
even
it
though
is.
it is self-evidently
Yeah.
that.
I would
Because I
love
do-
to
I think
give it
there's
a
merit and
break,
value
enough
in
of a
what it's
break to
doing.
call it a good movie, but I know that it's not a good movie.
No, it makes too many
Yeah.
mistakes. Like, it actively makes too many mistakes. I think that's the difference. It's not that it disappoints.
Mm-hmm.
It's that it goes out of its way to ruin itself.
Yeah.
That's what makes it a bad movie for me. But the
Well, and I also think, because I remember
the foundations of this movie are really solid.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree.
Because you've got the internet stuff, the haunted house stuff, the escape room, the interactive media part of it. You've got a pretty solid, short film at the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are all, this speaks very well of the movie as a whole, but it's just, it makes a lot of egregious turns within
For
that
sure.
that you can't apologize your way out
No,
of.
yeah, you can't try to stick up for it
No, and it's a
Yeah.
shame because
there's a lot you would stick up for this movie, but
But I definitely
its mistakes
think what
are its
people-
mistakes.
Its mistakes are its mistakes. But I definitely think what people don't recognize is that the original ideas and themes of the film
Mm-hmm.
translated into the finished film to some extent. That's not acknowledged about
Yeah,
this movie.
yeah. You're right.
They did. It's obviously not optimum,
Sure.
but they're there. There's moments of this movie that speak to the intellectual questions that were posed in the original concept of this movie before it got watered down by the studio and messed about with to the point that it became a bad movie.
Sure.
And by the studio, I mean Busta Rhymes.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to tell us what you think. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. We're not calling it good, but we're calling it better than you think. So let us know. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. When you hear us next time, Tom will be upset. We're talking Halloween 2018. Say goodbye.
Big surprise.
Say goodbye to everyone, Tom.
You hit me like I murdered your fucking mother or something.
All right.
Is he thinking of a different series?
He might be, yeah.
He thinks he's talking to Norman Bates, doesn't he?
That's great.